Today's video is a collection of my Pottery Barn inspired high-end decor dupes. I hope you love them as much as I do. This project is inspired by something I saw on the Pottery Barn website, and it was just called a finial piece. So I have this piece of a bed frame. I've cut it down, and now I'm just going to take my rough grit sandpaper, and I believe this is a 60 grit, and just get some of the finish off. I don't like this sort of mahogany color, but I want some of it to peek through. I just want this to look really old and weathered, like it's been out in the sun for a couple of years, or maybe even for 10 or 15 years. To give the piece a little bit more substantialness at the bottom, I'm going to use this 2x4 block. That's sort of the same color, but I'm going to then just use some hot glue and glue the finial piece right on top of the 2x4. Then I'm going to take a little bit of some mahogany gel stain that I have and color the 2x4 a little bit better so it blends in with the look of the finial. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to wipe it back with a paper towel, and this project is done, and I think it looks amazing.
I love the shape of these tall, skinny baskets. They're also very narrow, which I think is so unique. And this is something that I never find at the thrift store. So I'm going to try and make one myself. I'm going to be using this stovetop stuffing box because it's tall and skinny and narrow. Now, for sure, this isn't as big as the baskets that they show in the inspiration pictures, but you know what? I don't need a basket that big anyway. So I'm going to make a smaller version of it. Just cut off all the flaps and then you'll be able to get started. I'm using jute rope, which is something that I get at my local Dollarama store, and it's usually about $2.50 for, I think it's 9 yards. Anyway, I'm just going to use a bunch of this and just hot glue it all the way around, just overlapping and making it all the way to the top. So I'm not going to bore you with how this works. I'm pretty sure you probably get the idea. Just hot glue, wrap around, and keep wrapping until you get to the top. Once I got about 3/4 of the way up to the top, I took one longer piece of the jute rope and I'm gluing it together to make it flatter and wider. I want to have a thicker piece for the handle. And I'm using probably about 2 feet, 24 inches or so, and I'm going to glue probably only about 8 to 10 inches. These are going to become the handles, and I'm just going to glue them on the side. And I'm doing this before I finish wrapping the twine because I want this twine to go over the handles. So I'm just going to glue it down and then glue the other side down, just like you see here. Then I'll repeat this process for the other side of the box. The handles are secure, and now I'm just going to continue wrapping the rope all the way around. Once I get to the handle portion, I'm just going to use the hot glue and glue it right on top and sort of push the rope right into where the little dip is, where the handles are. Now that I'm all the way up to the top, I'm going to use a couple more rows, and I want to be able to camouflage that there's a cardboard box inside here. So I'm going to put the glue right on top of the cardboard box, and then I'll go down a couple of rows into the box. I'm going to be putting florals or something in it anyway, so you really won't notice it, but just in case, I just wanted to make sure that you wouldn't really be able to see the box. Here's where you can see the 2 rows that I have on the inside. To give the basket more of the look like in the pictures, I'm taking some white chalk paint and I'm going to give it a dry brush. Now, I don't have the pattern that these original boxes had, but I think this one turns out pretty good. Considering how expensive brand new baskets can be, I'm still on the lookout for something like this at a thrift store, but in the meantime, this will do. This is the next piece that I'm going to try and duplicate. I'm sure it has some really heavy weight to the bottom of it. It looks like it's some type of metal with the glass, but it was $300 and I think I can make that for less. So let's give it a try. This is a hurricane glass piece that I've had for many years, and I did paint a little bit of a design on it a couple years back. I'm going to remove all of that just using pure acetone and a makeup pad. And I have found pure acetone at my Dollarama store. You might be able to find it at Dollar Tree, but if not, most drugstores should have it. This is an old metal coffee can that I had painted for a project ages ago. It was also a trash to treasure, but I'm going to take my diamond blade on my little rotary tool here, and I'm going to just cut out the metal about halfway. And this little tool works really great. You have to be patient with it, especially because once the blade kind of gets caught in the metal, it automatically turns off. So it is a little finicky. I actually got the hang of it when I was almost at the end. Now you have to be careful. As I said, this is a blade, and if it slips and hits your hand, it definitely is going to hurt. I should have had gloves on, but because I wear my braces, it's really hard to put gloves on top. But no injuries were sustained during the creation of this project. To make the handles for this piece, I'm using these arched wood blocks. They came in a child's wooden building block set, and they were perfect for what I needed, but I wasn't able to get them to sit properly, so I needed to do some trimming, and I'm just using my miter shears. This wood is super soft, and I was able to just go through it really easily. I pencil marked where I needed it to be cut, and then it worked out great. Now, since this is a metal piece, I'm definitely going to need something better than hot glue. So I'm using a combination of Gorilla Glue and hot glue, and hopefully it will stick the way I need it to stick. And I was very pleasantly surprised that it did stick. The inspiration piece was gold, but I am definitely not a gold person, so I decided just to paint it black. I have yet to decide if I want to maybe make it more of a silver galvanized kind of look, but I ended ultimately just leaving it black. I gave it 2 coats of chalk paint. Once it was dry, I gave it a coat of a glossy sealer, and then all I had to do was put the hurricane vase right inside.
Today's video is all about showing you what you can do without paying a Pottery Barn price and DIYing some projects for yourself. Most of the items that I have today in this video came from the thrift store. Some of them might be from the dollar stores, but most of the stuff is from my stash. I'm using my favorite permanent glue, which is Weldbond glue, because it's not just a wood glue. It works for glass, ceramic, tile, plastic, you name it. So this is basically a permanent glue, and it really holds up nicely, and it actually sticks pretty quickly. So it cures in about 24 hours, but after about 10 minutes or so, you can actually work with your projects. So it's not like E6000 where it's still going to slide around a little bit. That's why I love it. And it is available in my Amazon store if you want to try it out. So I've got a bowl that was in my stash, and this just came from one of my dollar stores. I've got a couple of pieces of these wood coasters. They came from the Dollar Tree at some point. There's little holes in them, so they've actually already been used for a project, and now I'm reusing them just to create a little bit of height because there's a dip in the bottom of the bowl. The next thing I'm going to be gluing on is the candlestick, and you can see that it was originally a glass one. It was painted black, then it was painted white, and then distressed. So I am using everything that I have in my stash and just repurposing them. The little wood bowl is going to be the base at the bottom, and this is what I'm trying to create. This is called a Farmstead Stoneware Footed Serving Bowl, and it retails for $59. I for sure thought that I could do this for way less, and I'm probably spending only about maybe $8 on mine, and that includes everything, even the paint. Once it had sat for a couple of hours, I took it outside and I gave it a couple of coats of white spray paint in just a satin finish. That just happens to be what I had in my stash. Before I did that, though, I did actually cover the inside with some newspaper and some painter's tape because I didn't want the inside to get any paint on it. I want that to still be able to be food safe. When you're doing projects like I am, I'm painting a lot. I'm investing in my tools. And this brush is from Staalmeester and it's the pointed sash. And it is my absolute favorite brush. I've tried different chalk paint brushes and just using regular dollar store brushes. And I thought I'm going to give these a try. And you know what? I am not going back to any other type of brush. The bristles are so soft, and you can even leave the paint on this for a couple of days, just wrapped in plastic. And the cleanup is still going to be as easy as if the paint was just being used. Warm water and the paint just slides right off the bristles. These are amazing. I do have a bunch of them listed in my Amazon store, but I highly recommend this brush in particular because it has all of the points at the top of it and it gets into all of the little cracks and crevices really easily. I did 2 coats of that paint that I showed you and I let it sit overnight to completely dry. Now I'm taking a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of water, and I've put it in this glass and I've just mixed it together. And then I took my brush and just dipped it in the water and then drained off a lot of it. And now what I'm doing is just creating a stoneware texture, and I'm going to show it to you up close in just a second. There it is. Look at that beautiful texture that you get just by tapping your brush a little wee bit. You get a bunch of speckles on there and it looks exactly like a stone finish. I'm going to continue doing this with the brown until I get the look that I like. I'm not going to go overboard with it. I just want to have some speckles all the way around. Then I'm going to switch over to some black acrylic paint. Again, just mix it with a tiny little bit of water, dip my brush in it, dragging my brush against the edge to get the majority of the water off, and then tapping it against my project. And the look of it turned out exactly how I wanted it to. I'm so excited that this actually looks almost exactly like the same pattern and color and texture that's on the Pottery Barn one. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. So here's the Pottery Barn one for $59, and here's mine, which probably cost me about $8. Yes, they look different, but I think I was pretty spot on with the color and the texture of the stone. I'm really happy. The second project that I have for you today is a wooden box makeover. Now, this one just has the little extra lip down at the bottom, but this was also a thrift store find. It's already been painted once, and I've used it a couple of times for different things, but now I'm going to make it over one more time. So I'm taking just some black chalk paint and I'm going to give it one good coat. This is what I'm trying to recreate. Some reclaimed wood boxes, a set of 3 for $169. There's no way I would ever pay that price. I'm going to show you how you can get the look of reclaimed wood just using a few different colors of paint. So I've got my black, it's completely dry, and now I'm going to take this tan color, and these are just latex paints that I pick up, the little freebies and the discounted ones that you can get at the hardware store. And I'm just going to do some dry brushing with that color. And it's okay if I get a little bit of a darker look on it, like if I get more of the tan color, because I've got 2 other colors that I'm going on top of this yet to create the look that I'm going for. Once I have the first color on, I like to go with a lighter touch and then I can always come back and darken it up. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm using the same tan color, but I'm adding a little bit more of the color to it just to bring out more of a wood grain look. Next color I'm using is a soft gray. It's sort of like a dove gray color. You can see the color on the cardboard there. That's where I'm getting the dry brushing from. I just blob a bunch of paint on my cardboard and then I just go ahead and use that for the dry brushing effect. And you can see that there's already a bunch of different colors showing up on this box. Next, I'm using some burnt umber just to give it more of a wood look, more of the brown. But then I noticed that it was just blending in a little bit too much. So I switched back to the tan color and added a little bit more of that on top of it. The final piece of the puzzle is going to be adding a little bit more of the black right on top again, just to bring out some of the brush strokes and make it look like wood grain. Here's another look at the Pottery Barn set for $169, and here's a look at mine. They are a little different. The shape of my box is different than what they have, and I probably could have used a little bit more brown, but I still think mine turned out great. In the summer, I found a set of 4 of these canisters, and I'm going to be using some hot glue just to add some textural lines to them. And this is what I'm trying to recreate. This is a beautiful vase. It's $139. And yes, it's terracotta and the shape is different, but I thought I could recreate somewhat of the look just using this canister and a little bit of hot glue. It was great that the design on this canister had these grid lines, so I was very easily able to keep my lines straight, although they are a little bubbly here and there, but the texture on that vase was very not uniform either, so I wasn't really worried about that. So I'm just going to continue making these lines with my hot glue and then just set it aside so they can fully cure. Again, I took it out to my garage, gave it a couple of coats of white spray paint just to help because when I'm putting my other paint on, I don't want that dark green to show through. So I've got some white chalk paint in a little cup here and I added just a splash of burnt umber because I wanted this to be more of a warmer white color and it turned out pretty good. Then I'm going to add a bunch of baking soda until I get the thickness and the texture that I want for this. I usually add about a half a teaspoon of baking soda at a time. I don't use any measurements. I just kind of throw it in there until I get the look of texture on the paint that I'm going for. I'm using just a regular dollar store brush to apply the paint. I don't like to use my expensive brushes when I'm using any type of texture like baking soda, simply because I don't want any of the grit to stay in my brushes. I'm going to give this 2 coats. So here's the Pottery Barn one again, and here is mine. They are different in shape. They are a little bit different in the color. I probably should have added a little bit more brown to my paint, but $139 for a vase when I spent $250, I think I like mine a lot better. If you ever go to the thrift store, check the kitchen area. There's always a ton of rolling pins. I don't think there's a lot of people nowadays who enjoy doing home baking, so you can always find some. And the older they look, the better they are for this project. I'm reusing a couple of ones that I'd done for Christmas. This one I had painted the handles red, so I'm just using some rough grit sandpaper and some muscle to get this off. And I always forget about my rotary tool. So I remembered about partway through this and thought, wow, I could just go ahead and use my rotary tool and sand all of this gunk off. I have this particular rotary tool listed in my Amazon store, and the reason I love it so much is that it's really easy to switch out all of the different attachments. Plus, you can add different attachments to it, like you could add a regular drill bit to it, like I've done here. And I'm just going to need to take that off and replace it with the sanding disc. So, what I'm going to be doing then is just using the little wrench to open it up, pull that off, and pop the other one on. So simple to do. It really makes quick work of getting all of the paint off even better than with my regular sanding paper. So I'm going to continue to take the paint off of this one and then I'll do the other side as well. This is what I'm trying to recreate. These are some reclaimed wood decorative rollers. It's a set of 4 for $100. I got all of my rolling pins for about 3 or 4 bucks. Now, they're not these smaller ones that are really sweet, but I'm going to be on the lookout for some of these when I go thrifting next. My idea for the rolling pin itself, because it still looks fairly new, I'm going to use the same disc here and just sand off some of the finish on this just to give it a little bit more texture. So when I do my finishing touch on it, it will look a lot more rustic. To create an old and weathered look on the rolling pins, I'm going to be using some black wax, and this is from Behr, and it's available at Home Depot. Now, I'm going to just take a paper towel and I'm just going to start applying the wax and rubbing it in. I went really lightly to start and then I went over it again, making sure that I grabbed a little bit of extra wax on some of the areas where I had sanded, just so it would get into all of those little rough spots and be a little bit darker. I love how this one turned out. This rolling pin is absolutely humongous. Let me know down in the comments if you know what this would have been used for. I think it probably would have been like an industrial baker kind of thing. One of the handles is already busted off, and I did paint the other handle charcoal, as you can see here. But I am going to take my rotary tool and just get some of that paint off. But I really like the look of this large one. It already has some dark spots and aged looks, so I'm going to leave this one as is, and I'm not going to add any black wax to it. Again, here are the Pottery Barn ones, a set of 4 of these mini ones for $99. I've got some larger ones, but I think I did a pretty good job making them look a little bit more aged than they were. Mine were about $4 each. Here's a look at how all of my projects turned out. You'll have to let me know what you think of them. Here's my inspiration for this next piece. This is one of the biggest candlesticks I have seen and picked up at the thrift store in a really long time. It has all these funky colors on it, but I really loved the chippiness of it. If it would have been one solid color, like even that sort of gray green down at the bottom or the ivory, I probably would have left it that way, but I just didn't like that blue. So I'm taking this beautiful color, which is called mushroom. I love it. It's my favorite color to use, and I'm going to give this 2 coats. Now I'm going to take a really tiny brush and some of my black wax, and I'm just going to go in all of the grooves. And that was my original thought, but then I decided that all of it needed just a little bit of dirtying up. I'm going to use a rag and add just a little bit to the rest of the candlestick. I didn't put a lot on the rag. I just wanted to get a little bit of a tinge of it being not so brand new. I think it turned out just perfect. I found these eucalyptus stems at the thrift store, so I took the wreath apart that they came in and cut them down to size. I'm going to be making a beautiful greenery wreath. I needed something to put on the back of my staging area that would just transition me from wintertime into spring. So I thought just a regular greenery wreath would be perfect. This is my Pottery Barn inspiration. It looks a little different, but I tried to use as much as I had in my stash rather than buying new. I really enjoy working with these wicker wreaths that you can get at dollar stores. I believe this one was a natural color and I had painted it white for a different project. But I also like to use grapevine wreaths because they're really easy to be able to stick the stems in and then just reinforce them with a little bit of hot glue. I like to add at least three different types of greenery to my wreaths. I believe that makes them look a lot more high end, but it also gives them different colors and textures. Once I had all of these sort of lamb's ear greenery pieces in, I decided that I didn't like how long they were. They were kind of floppy, so I trimmed off the little bits at the top and added those to the wreath too. The last bit of greenery that I'm going to add are these little small eucalyptus branches. They kind of look like boxwood, at least they have the colors of boxwood. And I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue and place them here and there on the wreath, just again to add a little bit more texture and color. One thing that I do a lot when I'm making my wreaths is pick them up and look at them from different angles, just to make sure that I have everything in the position that I like. And once it looks good to me, then I decide that it's finished. I really love how this one turned out, and I hope you like it too. I'm starting off with this silver dollar tabletop tree. So it's not very big. It's perfect for on a table, on a counter, wherever. I made this lemon tree years ago and it has been sitting in my garage for a really long time. So I'm just going to take it apart. I like the bones of it, but it needs to be a lot looser, a lot more sparse. And of course, these ficus leaves need to get changed into a different shape completely. I'm going to continue pulling off some branches and some stems. I'm going to grab my scissors and snip some of the stuff that I don't need, and then I'll be able to start working on it and making it look beautiful. Here's what it looks like right now. It's a lot less full, and I'm liking the look of it, but now I've got to change up those leaf shapes. Silver dollar leaves are very similar to eucalyptus, so I am just going to cut out what shape I think looks good. I'm going to round off that top, getting rid of the point, and then I'm going to kind of make it a little bit of a wider piece on the top than it is towards the bottom. I'm going to show you here in a sec, and this is the most time-consuming part of this project, but I really think it's worth it. So if you've got a tree like this in your home and you're tired of the look of it, and you want to create something new, then by all means, let's get into creating some high-end decor with a trash to treasure price. Here's a look at the shape that I am using to cut these leaves into. It's still got a little bit of a pointed top, but not quite that sharp. Next, I went into my garden and I've got a bush that has a lot of dried branches on it that need to get cleaned up, but I haven't gotten around to it. So I just trimmed off a couple of the branches, and what you want is something that you can fit into a drilled hole in the original stem, which is a piece of wood. It's not plastic. It was an actual branch that I used for that original lemon tree. You want something that has some additional little branches because, of course, each branch is going to have its own little leaves going off in different directions. So I'm going to do quite a few of these. I'm going to fix it up and then start adding some of the leaves onto these branches. All the extra branches that I had pulled off of the original lemon tree, I pre-cut into the eucalyptus or the silver dollar shapes, and now I'm using hot glue to apply them to these additional branches that I've included on the tree. I ended up not leaving these branches quite so long. It ended up being a little more sparse than I wanted it to be, so I just adjusted it. Once I had all the leaves on, and I just took a look at it, spun it around a few times to make sure that it was fairly even on all sides. And I just started trimming and then adding the trimmed pieces onto some different areas. So this is not a science to this. It's how does it look? Do I like it? And let's fix it if it doesn't look the way you expected it. I did find this $8.99 cookie jar at the thrift store, and yeah, it was a little pricey, but it is completely stone and it has this gray glaze on it, but it looks like a crock, right? So I decided to take this putty chalk paint, which is from Krylon, and it's just something I had in my stash. I've always got a little helper when I'm in the garage. Check out where that black arrow is, and you're going to see my little friend Chippy just popping her head around the corner, popping in and popping out. She's so cute. Anyway, a couple of quick coats of this chalk paint, and I'm going to leave it the matte finish. I think it turned out gorgeous. Now I've got my tree stuffed into the pot with just whatever I had hanging around. There's a few pieces of wood down at the bottom just to wedge it in place. And then I did some old floral foam on top. And this is just some pea gravel. I'm just going to throw that in the top. I think it just makes a little beautiful accent instead of just using dirt or moss. I was just tired of using moss all the time on all of my plants, and I have this extra pea gravel. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Let's take a look at both of the trees side by side, and you guys can let me know what you think. Mine is on the left, and the Pottery Barn inspiration is on the right. I really loved the look of this barrel tray, and I knew I could recreate it when I remembered I had this tray that I created last year sometime. It's a 24-inch round, and I just used some Jenga blocks, which I got at the thrift store for about $4 for the whole box, and I just used hot glue and glued them all together. I think I had to shave one of the blocks down just a little bit with my rotary tool. What I'm going to do now is just take my favorite stain, and this is just a water-based stain. All it is water and a couple of different shades of brown, a little bit of black, and it creates sort of this dark walnut kind of finish. I always have it in this little squirt bottle from the Dollar Tree, so it's ready to go whenever I want it. And if I need to change the color a little bit, I can just add some of my acrylic paints and change up the color. I'm applying it with a rag, and I'm just going to go everywhere around it, and it's going to look gorgeous. Remember these cookie trays from the Dollar Tree? I had one buried in my stash, pulled it out, and I really love these for creating something that is a faux galvanized look. The texture of these cookie sheets was perfect with that sort of bumpy look on it. Even when you smoothed it out, it still looked really true to a galvanized kind of piece. But my Dollar Tree doesn't carry them anymore. So if you still have these, let me know because they are really fun to use for crafting. Anyhow, let's move on. I'm going to cut this into 4 different strips. Make sure I have enough to go all the way around the tray like the inspiration. I just used a piece of scrap wood to smooth out the lines on this. And once I'm done that, I'm just going to cut it into 4 strips, fold them up so there aren't any sharp edges, and make sure that they fit all the way around the tray. Each time I made a fold, I did use the piece of wood just to smooth it down a little bit more. I had to trim a little bit, and then I just measured it up against the tray to make sure I had the right width. The paint that I'm using is a automotive paint. It actually is for metal, so I know it's going to stick really good. And it's sort of a, I don't know, I guess a dark gray, you could say. I'm going to give this just one coat, making sure I cover all of the pieces. And you know what? It was dry in about 5 minutes. So that was a real bonus. Now, getting these metal pieces stuck to the tray was going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, I guess you could say. You can't use hot glue. I mean, you could, but it's not going to stick permanently. And I wanted this to stick permanently. So I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue Clear Grip. I'm going to put it on the wood. And then I'm going to put the strip on and I'm going to use a gazillion different clamps. And I'm going to make sure that it's clamped on there really well. I ended up clamping this and leaving it overnight. The whole thing was clamped down, so it was really funny to take a look at, but I just had it sitting there overnight, and once I took all the clamps off the next morning, it was completely dry and permanently adhered to this. And I'm okay with that because I really love how this one turned out. So if you don't want it to be a permanent fixture, then go ahead and just use some hot glue. Another idea to affix this somewhat permanently is to use double-sided tape. That would probably work too, but I didn't have any, so I was not going to go out to the store and get some. I'm just going to do it with what I have on hand. One thing I'm doing a little differently with this piece as well is I'm not going to be putting any handles on this tray. I like how it turned out just the way it was. Let's see the trays side by side so you can let me know what you think. Mine was about $16 if I had to add up all the stuff that I used, and the Pottery Barn one, $145. The final project I have for you today is using this old tin bucket to create this stone look vase with preserved boxwood. Now, preserved boxwood is super expensive, and that is something I would never invest in, but it is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm just going to recreate with what I have on hand. This tin bucket has been hanging around for a long time. It had a really sort of an ugly arrangement in it, so I wasn't really using it. So this is a perfect way to upcycle this into something beautiful. Once that was completely dry, I put some white acrylic paint into a bowl and I'm adding a lot of baking soda. This is the first batch of baking soda that I'm going to add to it. I do end up adding a little bit more, and I'm using this stippling brush. This is my favorite brush to add even more texture to these types of projects. So mix it in. Don't be afraid to add a lot of baking soda. You'll still have a workable paint, but if it does get too thick, you can thin it down with a little bit of water. A quick tip for you is don't paint up and down and in straight lines like I am. I wish I would have gone more in a circular motion, or maybe even just kind of cross-hatched it a little bit, which is where you go back and forth in sort of like an X pattern, because you were able to see a little bit of the lines because, of course, I'm adding texture to it. So live and learn. Next time I do a project like this, I will do something a little bit differently with how I apply it. I'm going to go through it, give it one good coat, and then I'm going to do a second coat and I'm going to be stippling that. And that is just pouncing your brush up and down. With this second coat, when I'm pouncing, I am not too concerned about getting full coverage. I just want to hide some of the up and down stroke lines. Once that coat was completely dry, I added a little bit of brown paint into this just to give it more of a sort of a dirtier look, I guess is what you would call it. So I'm just mixing up whatever I have left in my little bowl, and I'm going to then just start pouncing it sporadically all over the pot. Not in any type of pattern. I don't want full coverage again. I just want to be able to add a little bit of dimension with this little bit of extra color. And again, I'm definitely not going for full coverage. I'm actually just going to be plopping this on in different areas because when a terracotta or a concrete pot or whatever that happens to be ages and is weathered from outside, it's not going to age and weather the same way all the way around. So this is a little different of what the original pot turns out like, but again, these are just Pottery Barn inspirations. As I mentioned earlier, preserved boxwood is really expensive, and I didn't even want to use any of the faux flowers that I have in my stash because I didn't have the right look. And then I remembered I have real hydrangeas that are this beautiful green color in my garden, and soon they're going to turn brown. And I thought these are mounded perfectly in sort of a half circle shape, and I could just add these into the pot and make it look like it was a half sphere sitting on the top of my pot. And I really love these hydrangeas, especially when they turn this color. And then towards the fall, even when it gets cooler, they're going to turn a beautiful shade of brown. Let me know what you think of this project. I think it turned out really pretty. It's time to take a look at these two side by side. Mine is on the left, and I only paid $5 a few years ago for that tin pot, and the Pottery Barn inspiration is 143. Would you I really like the look of this Pottery Barn little coffee table, and I'm only putting a love seat in my living room. So I wanted something that was a little smaller. And I went out to my garage and remembered that I had this slab of a live edge wood piece. And I thought that would be a perfect little coffee table for in front of my love seat. So I'm going to make it over, and it's going to look similar to that Pottery Barn one that I showed you, but it's going to be a little bit different. Again, this is all just Pottery Barn inspired. You don't have to make things exactly the way they look on their websites, but you just work with what you've got. These legs came from some really old coffee tables. I saved them, and I knew at some point I was going to be able to put them to good use. I'm just cleaning these legs with some Crud Cutter gloss off, and that just kind of dulls them down a little bit, really cleans them up. And this one is a no rinse formula. So I was really excited when I saw that at my local hardware store because I didn't want to have to worry about rinsing things. These legs already have the bolts sticking out at the top because they just screwed into the other piece on the old tables. But I had to figure out a way how to attach them to this wood. So the first thing I'm going to do is just measure out how far I want them in from the edge and then make the markings appropriately. Next, I'm going to take a drill bit, and I needed to use one that was a little bit smaller than the size of the bolt so it would screw in nice and tight. I also added some Gorilla Glue Clear Grip into the holes and at the bottom, so when the leg was screwed all the way in, it would have some extra security to hold it in place. My favorite color of stain to use is dark walnut. This is a gel stain, and I've only got a tiny little bit sitting down at the bottom, and it's got some chunks in it too. So I'm going to try it out, see how it works, and hopefully have enough to just cover the top of this one. And I'm using just a lint-free cloth to apply the stain. I don't like to use a brush, especially for a gel stain, simply because it could get on there a little too thick. I'd rather start with a lighter layer and then go a little bit darker if I need to. The gel stain was just enough for the top of this piece, so I switched over to my dark wax for this one, and I did have it watered down. It's in a liquid form anyway, but I wanted to just make sure that it was more of a stain rather than a really thick color. Once everything was completely dry, I sprayed it with some matte clear finish. I gave it a couple of coats. I'm not going to be putting anything really heavy or using this table very much. It's basically going to be for display. So I just thought a couple of coats of the spray matte clear would be just perfect. If you've been with me for a while on my channel, you'll know that I am not a gold person. So these little gold feet at the bottom need to get fixed up. And I started by putting the painter's tape on the gold and was just so clueless at this point. I just giggled to myself afterwards and thought, what a goofball. You want to paint this bottom part, not tape it up. So here I am ripping it off, and I'm going to start over and put the tape at the top on the wood portion, not on the gold. I'm always trying to use up different paints that I have in my stash, and this is an automotive paint, and I thought it would be perfect for metal. It's sort of like a hammered gray, really dark gray finish, so I'm just going to use that on the bottom pieces here, and once that's dry, this table is done, and I am so in love with how it looks. It doesn't have the shelf on the bottom like the Pottery Barn inspiration does, but I'm okay with that. I really love that this only cost me $10. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you liked this video, here's a couple more that might interest you too. Have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.